Okay, so it's 6 o'clock and we'll get started. First off, I want to welcome everybody and just say thank you for joining me on this webinar. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Robert Glidewell. I'm a clinical psychologist, and almost 100% of my clinical work, my research work, and the training that I do is focused on helping people overcome sleep problems without medications. And I'm really excited to offer this training to you guys tonight. This training is based on more than 30 years of research on sleep and sleep problems and how to overcome them without medications. And I want to share with you just information from one study on trainings like these in terms of the impact they can have on your sleep. So a couple of years ago, there was a group of scientists and healthcare providers in California, and they had more than 300 people go through a training like this. And what they found was pretty remarkable. So 88% of people who went through this training, after putting the things that they'd learned in the training into practice, 88% of them were sleeping remarkably better. And when I say that, basically I mean they were falling asleep about 30 minutes faster than they had been before. They were waking up about 50% less than they had been before the training, and they were getting about an hour and a half more sleep than they were before they had started to put these things in place. So 88% of people got better. But what's even more remarkable, I think, is that about 30% of the people who went through the training actually completely eliminated their insomnia. So not only do people get better by just doing the things that I'm going to teach you tonight, but about a third of those individuals were also using sleep medication when they went through the training. And 30% of the people who were using sleep medications felt like they were sleeping well enough that they could stop their medications. This was after about a month of putting in place the things that this training is going to teach you. So I hope that this training and the things that you're going to be able to start to put in place after this training can have as significant an impact on your sleep. So we're going to cover several major things tonight. The first one is rapid relief techniques. These are things that you can start to put in place even beginning tonight, that within a matter of 14 to 21 days have a significant chance of beginning to reshape your sleep patterns in a meaningful way. Secrets of the Teflon mind. We're going to start to get into the way that thoughts actually interfere with our ability to sleep or fuel the fire of insomnia, so to speak, and what you can do to combat that thinking mind. Enhanced recovery demand. We're going to talk about how you can use your mind and body to maximize the need for sleep and to get the deepest, most solid sleep possible. In the ridiculous art of doing nothing, we're going to talk about how to begin to let go, shut down, and let sleep happen. And then in the healthy sleep habits, we're going to talk about the things that you can do to give yourself the best chance for a good night's sleep. And then to tie things up, we're actually going to get into, I'm going to walk you through a personal sleep transformation plan. I want you to walk away from this webinar, like I've said, with a specific plan of what you're going to start doing to change your sleep patterns. In order to have the motivation and the energy and the understanding of things to be able to do that, we're going to just talk about a couple of things. The first one is, where does your sleep come from? And the second one will be, what's your sleep story? And so where does your sleep problem come from? First off, I want to talk about this 3P perspective, which is probably the most widely accepted understanding of insomnia, which is trouble getting to sleep, staying asleep, or just feeling unrefreshed. So on the left hand here, we've got just normal sleep, and that represents predisposing factors. And what that means is we're all born with a sleep temperament, so to speak. Some of us are finicky sleepers, some of us are champion sleepers, but we're all kind of born with the ability to sleep well or not, and that kind of sets the stage for us being at risk for developing a sleep problem throughout life. Next, this short-term difficulties sleeping. So we have our predisposing, our temperament, so to speak, and then we add on there these precipitating factors. And that can be a stressor. So maybe good stress like having a new child or getting a new job, or maybe not so good stress like going through a divorce or having financial problems. These are things that are going to kick off or kickstart a sleep problem. It could also be illness or injury. Maybe you're hurt in an accident, or develop a condition with chronic pain like fibromyalgia or arthritis, things like that. These are things, again, that can kickstart a sleep problem. All right. So in many cases, we experience a stress or an illness and we sleep poorly during that active time of stress or illness, but then everything goes back to normal when our life settles down. However, for some of us, actually about 30% of us, when we go through a stressful period like that, something else happens and we start to develop these perpetuating factors. And this is where a sleep problem begins to take on a life of its own. So we've started to experience some stress or illness, and then these things, this green block here, the perpetuating factors, there are things that start to cause trouble with sleep that are completely separate from the illness or the stress. And this might be things like after you've had trouble sleeping for maybe weeks or months, you start dreading going to bed because you know you're going to have a bad night. And when you dread the bed, then it just makes it harder to sleep. This might be worry about sleep that actually keeps you from sleeping. Or maybe instead of, in an effort to try to compensate for trouble sleeping or inadequate sleep, maybe you start to take long naps or you stay in bed longer. Also, maybe you start canceling activities because you're afraid you'll have a bad night's sleep, or you're afraid you won't be able to perform at your best, and so you stop participating in things. These are all things that make sense on the surface, but they actually are going to make the sleep problem worse. So that moves us into this long-term section where sooner or later we kind of adjust to stress or illness, and hopefully it gets to a place where it's not as severe. Sometimes the stress or illness can be gone entirely, but now these perpetuating factors, this sleep problem that's taken on a life of its own, are really the main reason for the sleep problem continuing, or at least a major reason for it continuing. Okay, so we've got those perpetuating factors, and the rapid relief strategies and several of the other things we're going to talk about are going to directly serve to break down those perpetuating factors. Now, some of the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight is also going to address those precipitating factors, those things that kickstart a sleep problem. So here's just a few of those. We're not really going to get into sleep apnea tonight, breathing problems at night, but those can kickstart a sleep problem. We will be talking a little bit about stress as a source of the sleep problem, and more specifically some things that you can do, specific strategies like the relaxation and meditation that can begin to reduce stress as well as improve sleep in and of itself. The circadian rhythm or body clock can also be a source of the sleep problem, and we'll talk a little bit about how to account for that or figure out if maybe a body clock problem is part of what's going on for you. We're not going to talk specifically about pain or psychological problems like depression or anxiety or medical or medication reasons for having trouble sleeping, but what I would say about that is the things that I'm going to teach you tonight can help improve your sleep even if you do have a problem like depression or fibromyalgia or arthritis. So even if you have another kind of health problem, when you put in place the strategies I'm going to teach tonight, the sleep will almost certainly get better, and there's some really nice research that shows us that that's true. Okay. As far as lifestyle factors, the last section, healthy sleep habits, we're going to get into that and talk about how do you live your life or structure your habits in a way that gives you the best chance for a good night's sleep. Okay, so now we're going to take a minute and I want you to start to just think about your sleep story. How sleep has affected you or your life, and also how your life will be different when your sleep problem is better. And the key here is that in order to really be strongly motivated to make the changes I'm going to ask you to make, it's important to really understand the impact that the sleep problem has had on your life. On the flip side of that, it's also extremely important to understand where you're headed, what you're going to get out of making these changes, which sometimes can be unpleasant and challenging. And so I'm going to give you guys, let's see here, we're going to say 30 seconds or a minute here, and I want you to just maybe scratch down a couple of short answers to this question. How does poor sleep affect your life during the day in terms of family, health, fun, work? So take about a minute here and just write down some answers to that question. And then what I'd like you to do is type into the chat box the biggest way that poor sleep affects your life during the day. Okay, so again, whenever you've got that done, take and go down to that chat box and just put in there the biggest way that it affects your life. All right, yeah, Roxanne put unable to accomplish much. Absolutely, performance or productivity starts to just slow down and sometimes come to a halt. Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to move on to the second question here. This one focused on how is your life going to be different when you have started to change your sleep pattern and you're beginning to sleep in a satisfying way. So I'm going to give you guys another 30 seconds or a minute here so that you can just write down a few of the things. When I'm sleeping great, I am, how are you different? Okay. And when I wake up well rested every day, how will you behave differently? How you relate to people differently? Just take a minute and write that down. And then when you're done with that, again, just type the biggest way that you'll be different when you're sleeping well. Go ahead and type that into the chat box. Okay. So yeah, thank you. So Julia said the way that affects her the biggest is that she's grumpy at night with her kids. Thank you, Julia. Roxanne said the way that she'll be different when she's sleeping better, she'll be happier, she'll be getting more done. And then, yeah, thank you again, Julia. Julia said that she'll have more energy and be able to think more clearly. Absolutely. It's just amazing the way that either poor sleep or insufficient sleep really just drags down our ability to think clearly and make decisions and things like that. All right, guys, so I hope you've got a clear picture of just your sleep story. Let's move on.